Disclaimer!
The following section discusses rape, sexual assault, murder, and the abuse of animals. This episode of the podcast may be experienced more shocking than others. Viewer discretion or listeners' discretion is advised. Hi guys, welcome back to
Episode 2
of PodCrime.
Crime.
And in this episode we're gonna discuss
Jeffrey Dahmer.
and Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer. He was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin in the United States, May 21, 1960. About his childhood, it said that he lacked attention, but in some other sources we saw that his family, some of his family's members said he had enough of attention, and they showed him enough love. It was like described as a picture perfect family. If you look it up, they all tell you something different. According to the children, there was a lot of toxicity in the house, and they were always fighting. She was always fighting with her husband. She also didn't give her kids enough attention, so they were like neglected. But according to Jeff's parents, they say that everything was perfect and they were just like a little perfect family. And about Jeff's dad was spending a lot of time in college getting his chemistry degree, so he was often not there because he wanted a good job to take care of his family, of course, and make money for his family. So his wife wanted a lot of attention, but he couldn't give it because he was so busy with school. Jeff also found his childhood very tense and stressful because of his parents' arguments. Unfortunately, because of Joy's depression, she tried to commit suicide once. She fortunately survived it. Jeff was described as a happy, energy-filled child until he turned the age of 4. When Jeffrey turned 4, he had to go through an operation to correct his double hernia. After that surgery, it said he was he changed, his personality changed. He wasn't as happy and just wasn't that good old Jeff anymore. He became really quiet and humble, and his teachers said he was very reserved, and his teachers also said that they thought he was neglected, but no further investigation and nothing else came of it. At a very young age, Jeff was fascinated with dead animals. He had a large collection of insects, and he will keep them in a jar just to keep them.
Ew.
Yeah, it's very gross. This was still on a small scale. He soon moved on to some bigger scale. He took like animals that were like driven over by cars and passed away. He would also dissect and dismember the animals. Yeah, very gross. And his reason for this is because he wanted to see what they looked from the inside. He would store them in his barn from his house or in a forest area, and he will almost always dismantle, dissect, dismember them right there. So yeah, that's so fun, I guess. And like smell, what I heard from like other cases, people tell me that the smell of death has like a very, very like noticeable smell, but people didn't find out, so I don't think people even smelled it. One instance that we know of is that Jeff picked up a dog from the side of the road that was hit by a car. So the dog was dead, and he brought the dog home. He put the dog in a barn. Then he cut off the dog's head.
What?
Tied the dog's body to a tree. Then he took the dog's head and cleaned it and put his skull on a wooden cross. Now, no one is home to catch his heinous act. Yeah, that's what Jeffrey did in his free time when he was a young kid. So, in 1966, the family moved to Dallastown in Ohio, if I'm correct, in the United States, of course. During this time, Joyce, the mother, became pregnant with her second child, and the child again was a boy. Jeff was allowed by his mother to choose the baby's name, and he named him David. So in 1968, the family moved again, but this time to Bath in Ohio. That's what the city is called in the United States. So 2 years later, in 1970, Jeff asked his dad while they were having dinner what would happen to the bones of a chicken they were eating if they were put in bleach solution. His father thought it was just an innocent question, and he was just showing his curiosity into chemistry and science. So his dad was really excited about the question Jeffrey asked. After that, Jeffrey's dad also showed him how to do it, so that will later come in play. Around the time when Jeff turned 14, his personality and how he acted just became less, like, it didn't became that good. He was acting very bad. He brought alcohol to school during his high school years, and he would drink before, after, during school. He would just always drink. He also found out that when he hit puberty, he was gay and he was interested in men. He hadn't told his parents, but they didn't have the best relationship either. He started a relationship with another boy around that time, and they started talk about sexual fantasies, and he would fantasize about dominating someone, and he wanted it to be a submissive male partner. This will also later come in place in this case. So in 1977, Jeff's grades in school were just getting worse and worse and worse. His alcohol use was also getting worse and worse. You could say that he was addicted to alcohol. His relationship with his parents also didn't become that good. It was also very bad. They tried marriage counseling, but that didn't work. So eventually, the parents decided on divorce. That was very hard on Jeff, and Jeff's father thought it was a good idea to move out of the family home, so he did. In May of 1978, Jeff finally graduated high school. Soon after, Joyce got custody of her younger son, David. She then moved with David into the home of other family members. She then left Jeff alone in the family home. On June 18, 1978, when Jeff was almost 19, Jeff was driving home and he saw a hitchhiker on the side of the road. He sees the hitchhiker and parks next to him, and he says, "Do you want to go to my house? I have a couple of beers. We can just chill. I have the house to myself." So the hitchhiker went along and just went as Jeff said, chill. So the hitchhiker got to the point where he wanted to go home. Jeff didn't take that, and he grabbed a 5-kilogram dumbbell and slammed it into the back of his head, when he then strangled the guy to death. That was officially Jeffrey Dahmer's first murder. He then took off his clothes and masturbated all over his body. In later interviews, Jeff really said that excited him. So the next day, he still had the hitchhiker's dead body in his house. So he wondered and asked himself, what can I do with the body? So he took the body to the basement and started dismembering it. He digs a hole in his yard and buries the body. After a few weeks, he decided to dig up the body and dismember it even more. Then he remembered how his father told him to dissolve animal remains in bleach or acid. So he applied that to the hitchhiker's body with acid, and thereby dissolves his skin from his bones. He grabs hydrochloric acid solution, I think it's called, and flushes it down the toilet and crushes the bones and scatters them in a wooded area. 6 weeks on, and his father has found a new wife. They visited Jeff to see how he was doing, and they found out he was living alone. His father did not know that his mother had moved out. His father decided it would be best if Jeff went to college, and that he needed to do something productive with his life because he couldn't just sit around and do nothing. His father even suggested to pay for it. And so Jeff went to a place called Ohio State University. When he was in college, he had a GPA score of 0.45, which in Holland is equivalent to a F grade. So he was failing in almost all his classes, or a 5 or below. So like it's not good. So he wasn't the smartest. Eventually, he even dropped out of school in 3 months. So his dad really tried to give him purpose in his life. His father asked him if he at least wanted to do something else. So Jeff signed up for the army. He was becoming a soldier. So Jeff agrees, and he trains to become a medical specialist in San Antonio, Texas. By July 1979, he had been posted to Western Germany, where he served as a combat medic. Some sources says that in his first year he was normal, but later allegations emerged that he raped 2 other soldiers. One came forward in 2010 and said Jeff had raped him for 17 months at length, and the other said he drugged and then raped him in 1979. In March 1981, Jeff was discharged from the military due to his abuse of alcohol, so he was dishonorably discharged. He was sent to South Carolina for debriefing, and he also got a plane ticket. With this plane ticket, he could choose where he wanted to go. So with this plane ticket, he chose to go to Florida, Miami Beach, because he couldn't go back home and tell his father he has been discharged from military service. In Miami Beach, he found work at the restaurant and stayed at a nearby motel. Most of his income will go to alcohol, and he almost never could have paid his rent, so he got evicted. Finally, he asked his dad to move back into the house, but on one condition. His dad wanted him to do something with his life and encouraged him to try and get a job. So he used a lot of his time doing chores and looking for work. Even though Jeff was busy trying to straighten out his life, there was still a problem. He was still abusing alcohol. After a while, he was also arrested for drunkenness and for disorderly conduct, and he was fined $60, and he was given a 10-day suspended jail sentence. Jeff's father got tired of it. Jeff was always drunk, and in his room was full of empty alcohol bottles, and he sent Jeff to live with his grandma in West Allis, Wisconsin. His grandmother was now the only member who still had love and affection for Jeff. Jeff himself also loved his grandmother very much. When he went to live with his grandmother, he appeared to be happier and better off. He would go to church with his grandmother, help a lot around the house. He even found a new job at a blood plasma center, and he was able to keep that job for a good 10 months and then was laid off. He remained unemployed for 2 years. That's so long after that. Towards the end of 1985, he began visiting gay bathhouses. When he went to these bathhouses, he would have sex with several men who worked there. He said, this will also maybe later come in play. He said that he became very irritated with his partners and that he would share the bed with because they would move all the time, talk too much. He just didn't like it. So he wanted them to shut up. So he found a new way. He would drug them. To be precise, he would put sleeping pills in the victim's drinks. This was his method to control the victim. The victims will then pass out because of the amount of sleeping pills they were given, and Jeff will rape them in their sleep. Jeff did this 12 times. Eventually, the owners found out, and he was banned. You might wonder why they didn't call the police, but back in the day, everything gay was frowned on, so the police would not really come into action. Jeff was bound from the places where he was finding his victims, so he thought, why not do it myself? So he rented a hotel room on November 20, 1987. Jeff met a 25-year-old man at the bar. He asked the man if he wanted to join Jeff in his hotel room for some drinks and just to chill. So they did. According to Jeff, he 100% did not intend to kill the man. But really? But he only intended to drug and rape him while he was unconscious. The next morning, Jeff woke up to find a man lying on a bed underneath him. The man's chest was crushed and his skin was all blue and dark from it. Blood was coming out of his mouth, and Jeff's fist was full of blood and bruises. Jeff says in a later interview that he cannot remember this. After this, Jeff would get rid of the body. So he buys a big suitcase and he puts the body in that suitcase. Then he takes that same suitcase to his grandmother's house and leaves it there unopened for a week. Imagine the smell of it. After that week, he opens the suitcase and takes the body out and dismembers it. He chops off the head, the arms, then the legs, then the torso. He then removes the flesh and puts it in trash bags. He then puts the bones in papers and crushes it so the pieces don't go everywhere. And he uses a hammer to crush the bones. Then he threw away the remains of the body except the skull. He wanted to keep the skull. So he takes the skull, boils it in water, and puts it in solution Soil X and bleach. Soil X is a very strong cleaning agent. It's one American brand of a cleaning agent. Unfortunately for Jeff, the skull became very fragile and fell apart, so he wanted to preserve the head and keep it as a trophy. Jeff was quite sad about the skull, so he decided he needs another victim. He also finally found his passion in life: killing people. And here's where his killing spree starts. Many of his victims he meets in gay clubs or around them, and he will then ask them to go back to his house to chill. He would then drug and rape them there, and to kill them, he would strangle them. 2 months later, Jeff ran into a 14-year-old Native American prostitute. Jeff went up to him to ask him if he would pose for nude photos. He paid the boy $50 for it. The boy wanted the $50, so he and Jeff went back to his grandmother's house where he was staying, and they had sex there. Jeff then drugged the boy with sleeping pills that he put in his drink. He then passed out, and the boy just passed out, and Jeff strangled the boy. That resulted in the boy's death. Jeff left his victim in his grandmother's basement for a week. When he had another chance, Jeff dismembered the boy's body and threw it away in garbage bags. Again, as his first murder, he tried to keep the skull as a trophy of sorts. Again, he failed to preserve the skull. For the bones, the bones have become very fragile. He also threw away the skull after that. He tried to experiment with the proper ratio of the solution to preserve the skull in it. On March 24, 1988, Jeff met a 22-year-old man outside the gay bar. He asked the man if he would like to spend the night with him for $50. The man went along with him. They both go to Jeff's grandma's house, and Jeff drugged the man with sleeping pills. The man faints, and Jeff strangles him with a leather strap. Jeff decides to give himself oral sex with his victim. After this, he stripped the body. He cut away the skin, which left the bones. He crushed them, put them in trash, and he kept the skull. However, it is said at this time that Jeffrey didn't really want his man's skull because he was not that good looking. So instead of cooking it, he crushed the skull and he threw it away. On April 23, Jeffrey lured another man to his house. After he gave the victim drugged coffee, they both heard Jeffrey's grandmother call downstairs because they were in the basement. His grandmother called out, "Jeffrey, is that you?" This, of course, scared him, and he tried to pretend he was alone and had no guests with him. But his grandmother knew someone was with him because she had heard it. So he was like, "Okay, I can't kill this boy because my grandmother knows I have someone with me." Jeff had already drugged his victim, and the victim was unconscious, so he took him to his car and drove him to the hospital. There he dropped him off and then drove away. That victim was very lucky because he escaped his death. In September 1988, Jeffrey's grandmother asked if he could find another home because of his habit of taking men home late at night. His grandmother really didn't like it. She also said there are nasty smells coming from both the basement and the garage, and that his things stink, and that was most likely that bodies out there and the smell of blood. If his grandma had also gone downstairs, he would have seen what he was up to. But he found himself a one-bedroom apartment on September 25, and he moves out of his grandma's house. He then also started working at a chocolate factory, and so he was able to pay for his apartment. The day after he moved into his apartment, he was arrested for luring a 13-year-old boy, so a minor, to his apartment. He drugged and he sexually assaulted the boy. And in January 1989, he was convicted of assault in the second degree and also for inciting a child for immoral purposes. And the conviction for assault was suspended until May 1989. A few months later, he moved back in with his grandma. On March 25, 1989, Jeff met an aspiring model in a gay bar. According to Jeff, he was not looking for his next victim. It was almost closing time, and the victim came up to Jeff and started chatting with him. So, Jeff took his chance and asked the man if he would like to go home with him. The couple had oral sex, and Jeff drugged him and strangled this victim. The next morning, he decides to put the body in the bathtub and dismember the body. He decapitates the body and cuts the flesh of the bones. He crushed the bones and throws these away. He does keep his head. Jeff said he found this victim very handsome. This was the first victim whose body parts he did preserve for a long time. He preserved his head and his genitals and put it in acetone and kept it in his work locker from all places. When he moved again, he had took that with him. Jeff really liked this guy. On May 23, 1989 is when he would be sentenced for sexual assault of the 13-year-old boy. Jeff got only 5 years of probation, and he got a work release permit, which still allowed him to keep his job. He also had to register as a sex offender. What a major punishment. In May 1990, Jeff moved back into another apartment away from his grandmother. This apartment was on North 25th Street in Milwaukee. This place had a reputation for its high crime rates, which Jeff himself didn't really care about. It was close to his work at the chocolate factory, and his rent was $300 every month. Jeff's sixth murder was a 32-year-old male prostitute. He promised to pay him for $50 for sex in his apartment. Jeff gave this victim a drink with 7 sleeping pills in it, and he strangled him. The next day, Jeff bought a Polaroid camera. That's a camera where you take pictures and the pictures physically come out of them. With that camera, he took photos of the body of the victim in suggestive poses. Before dragging him in the bathroom, he boiled his legs, arms, pelvis, and rinsed his bones in the sink. And also, he dissolved the rest of the victim's bones in a basin with hydrochloric acid solution in it. Jeff dyed the skull and placed it next to the other skull he already had from the previous victim. In June 1990, Jeff lured a 27-year-old acquaintance of his to his apartment. He was drugged, strangled, and his skeleton was placed in a freezer in hopes that no moisture will remain, which it did. So he put the skeleton in hydrochloric acid solution. A few months later, the skull exploded because Jeff put it in the oven. That's really weird, sorry. Jeff met a 22-year-old who was a Chicago resident. He agreed to go to his apartment with Jeff after Jeff said he would give him $50 if he just chilled with him. Jeff first tried to have oral sex with this victim, but he said it will make him throw up extra. Jeff got angry and instead of drugging this victim, cut open his neck. This victim bled to death. He did this because he only had 2 sleeping pills left, and that would not be enough to render the victim unconscious. Jeff posed the man in suggestive positions and took pictures of him with his Polaroid camera. He dismembered the body in his bathtub. Jeff said that while he was dismembering the body, he kissed and talked to the victim's severed head. I'm not laughing because it's funny, it's just really gross. He wrapped his heart, biceps, and pieces of the victim's skin for later consumption. So he ate the guy.
Nasty.
He ate the guy. Eat it. I said he ate the guy. What? Okay. Jeff cooked the remaining pieces of skin and organs into some kind of jelly-like substance. He also used soy eggs to get the skin off the bones, and then he painted the skull and covered it with a layer of glaze. On September 24, Jeff lured yet another victim to his apartment. He didn't find this victim particularly attractive, so instead of keeping the body parts, he only took pictures of the dismemberment process and discarded the rest of the remains of the body. On April 7th, Jeffrey met a 19-year-old boy. He asked if he wanted to go home with Jeff, and the boy said yes. There, Jeff drugged him, and instead of following his normal routine, he drills a hole in this victim's head and pours hydrochloric acid solution into it. While this victim is not dead yet, Jeff hoped to induce a permanent, unsteady, submissive state. He wanted as goal to control his victim. The victim woke up despite all the damage to his head, and he said, "I have a headache. And what time is it?" The victim himself had not noticed that he had a hole in his head. In the end, Jeff drugged him anyway, and Jeff killed him. He killed him by strangling. He decapitates him and keeps the skull. He really wanted to preserve it undamaged, so he uses cold water with salt in it and put the skull in it. This attempt for retaining the skull also didn't work, so he threw it away. In 1991, there were many complaints from Jeff's neighbors in his apartment complex. They always indicated that there was a foul smell and odor coming from Jeff's apartment, and also that there were loud sounds of objects falling and sometimes the sound of chainsaws. The manager contacted Jeff over the phone and let him know that there were complaints about him. Jeff used the excuse that his refrigerator broke down and that all his food got spoiled, so that's why it smelled in his apartment. The manager thinks that this was a good excuse, but he calls him 2 weeks later again, and Jeff uses the excuse this time that some of his tropical fish has died, and that's why it stank. And Jeff denied there was ever a chainsaw in his apartment that was making that noise. On May 26, 1991, Jeff met a 14-year-old boy and offered to chill with him in his apartment for money. The boy was really reluctant at first and didn't want to go, but eventually he went. The boy posed for some pictures before Jeff drugged him. Jeff grabbed the drill and drilled a hole in the boy's head and put hydrochloric acid in there. The boy was still alive. Jeff led him to his bedroom, and in his bedroom sat the body of a victim he killed 3 days ago, and he was naked on the floor. The boy sees this before he faints, and he panics, gets dizzy, and faints again. Jeff drinks a few beers while laying next to him, and then Jeff goes to the local bar for a few drinks. He then gets more alcohol from the liquor store and goes back to his apartment. When he comes back, he sees that the boy was escaped and was surrounded by women, and they were wondering what happened to him, but the boy couldn't answer because there was a hole in his head. I will also not answer. Jeff sees that and walks to the woman and says he's a friend and he's just drunk. He tried to drag the boy to his apartment, but the woman didn't trust this and called the U.S. Emergency Department, 911. They tried to stop Jeff from taking the boy back to his apartment until the police finally come. The police finally came, and Jeff lied and told the police that it was his 19-year-old boyfriend, like romantic boyfriend, and that he had too much alcohol. The police thought it was a good reason to leave, but the woman didn't believe any of it and showed the police that the boy was bleeding from his behind. That's so sad. But the police did not want to hear anything. A police officer told the woman to butt out, shut the hell up, and do not interfere. This is between them. This is not your problem. Don't worry about it. Run along. The police wraps a towel around the boy and brings him back to Jeff's apartment. Jeff tries to prove with more evidence that the boy was his friend. For example, his boyfriend. And for example, the Polaroid photos that he took, and the boy was posed in a suggestive manner. Jeff had re-injected the boy with hydrochloric acid. He put the acid in his brain, and the boy died. The following day, Jeffrey had called out of work because he really wanted to devote his whole day to just dismembering two bodies. Jeffrey would lure 3 more men, kill and dismember them in the same way he did with his previous victims. He would call out from work to dedicate his time to dismembering his victims, which eventually led Jeffrey to getting fired. So he had no job. Because of that, he said that it made him kill and dismember another victim. Like, how are you that angry that you kill a person and dismember them? That doesn't make sense. On July 22, 1991, Jeffrey approached 3 men with an offer of $100 to accompany him to his apartment to pose for some nude photographs, drink beer, and simply just keep Jeff company. When is it ever just keeping someone company with Jeff? One of the trio was a 32-year-old man, and he agreed. He goes back to Jeffrey's home, and this victim said that instantly when he walked in the door, he got a whiff of just a foul smell. And then he noticed several boxes of hydrochloric acid on the floor. And he's like, hey, so yeah, what's that all about? A little suspicious. Jeff told him, oh, I used it to clean bricks. Oh, really? Clean bricks from all excuses. So the two of them go into Jeff's bedroom, and there in the bedroom was a 57-gallon drum in the corner, which the victim said there was this smell definitely coming from this drum. Jeff then placed his head on the victim's chest, kind of like in a romantic way, but instead he was holding a knife, so it was not that really like romantic. So Jeff said, I'm gonna rip your heart out, like every normal person always says. Of course, the victim was like, what? So he freaks out. Now at this point, the victim, he just knew like shit's about to go down. There are weird smells, weird boxes everywhere, and he's just acting really weird. And he's telling him he's gonna rip his heart out. Like, really, Jeff? Is that like your best pickup line, Jeff? So this victim decided he has to come with something called an escape plan, because I would escape too. So the victim asks Jeff if he can use his bathroom, and he goes in there, and he wants to see like if there's a window he can jump out of. So he's really stressing on this moment. So he comes back from the bathroom, and at this point they're just hanging out in the living room, and so then the victim asks again, can I use your bathroom? Not sure what his thought process was at this point, but yeah. So now this time he thinks Jeff is not really paying attention, so he just punches Jeff in the face and he runs as hard as he can out of the front door. At 11:30 p.m., the victim flagged down two Milwaukee police officers. He's like, "Hey, this dude, he tried to attack me. There's some weird stuff going on over there." And this victim had a handcuff on his wrist. Now, I failed to mention that at some point, when the victim went to Jeffrey's house, the victim was not paying attention, and he was looking the other way, and Jeff just handcuffed him. Like it's so normal. Like it's like just the normalest thing like someone does. So the victim was basically still wearing the handcuff when he flagged the police officers. So he asked the police officers to get his handcuffs off, but he didn't. He was like an armband. The keys didn't fit. So then the police officers went to Jeff's apartment to get his keys off because he still had the handcuffs. When the officers and the victim arrived at Jeff's house, you see the victim felt safe enough to go back to Jeffrey's home because the police officers were with him. They all go to Jeffrey's house. Jeff's invited the three inside and acknowledges he had indeed placed the handcuffs on him. Although he offered no explanation as to why he had done so, Jeff told one of the officers that he had the key was in his bedroom dresser. They all walked to the bedroom. But Jeff was like playing around and like he was being so weird about the key. So the police officers were like, "Get out of my way, we will get them." And this is when the police officers saw the dresser drawer. It was open and it contained many Polaroid pictures, many of which were just human bodies in various stages of dismemberment. Upon further inspection, they see that the decor in the background of these Polaroid pictures indicate to them that they had been taken in the very apartment in which they were standing, so in Jeff's apartment. So the police officer that went in the bedroom of Jeff, he went to the living room to show his partner, and he was like, "Are these real?" And they were just investigating if these were real pictures. So they came to the conclusion that they were real, and they wanted to arrest Jeffrey. And he fought with the officers in an effort to resist arrest because they were trying to put him in handcuffs. While they searched the rest of his house, and they called a second squad, a car for backup, so more police officers. At this point, one of the officers opens up the refrigerator, and they see the freshly severed head of a male on the bottom shelf. Wow, amazing.
That's so disgusting.
Like really, you like maybe expect to see cheese, you just see someone's head. So they decided to do a more detailed search of his apartment. When they were searching his apartment, they revealed a total of 4 severed heads in Jeffrey's kitchen. In total, 7 skulls. Some were painted and some were found in his bedroom inside his closet. They were just like skulls and body parts scattered around places, and like in some corners. They found 2 human hearts, a portion of an arm muscle, and wrapped in a plastic bag in the bottom shelf of the fridge. In Jeff's freezer, investigators discovered an entire upper torso, a whole torso, plus a bag of human organs, flesh stuck to the eyes at the bottom of the freezer. Throughout the apartment, investigators discovered 2 entire skeletons. 2 entire skeletons. A pair of severed hands, 2 severed and preserved penises, a mummified scalp, and in the 57-gallon drum, remember it was like in the bedroom, like in a corner, 3 further dismembered torsos that were dissolving in acid solution. A total of 74 Polaroid pictures detailing the dismemberment of Jeffrey's victim were found. Jeffrey was arrested. On July 23rd of 1991, Jeffrey was brought in for questioning. He's already been arrested. He's been sitting in prison waiting for his trial, for his questioning. Jeffrey had admitted to investigators to having murdered 16 young men in Wisconsin since 1987. And on January 30th, 1992, his trial began for the 15 counts of first-degree murder. The trial has lasted 2 weeks, and Jeff was sentenced to life imprisonment plus 70 years. The death penalty was not an option because the state of Wisconsin has abolished capital punishment in AD 53, so that means they don't do killing of people who kill people. He was gonna spend the rest of his life in prison because, yeah, of course, life in prison is like life in prison. Jeffrey had spent the first year of his incarceration in solitary confinement due to concerns of his physical safety amongst his fellow inmates. People were trying to kill him, and I understand that. Do you understand that, Navaani?
Yes.
He's kind of crazy, right, Lizzy? Jeffrey Dahmer, he's really crazy, right?
Yeah, very crazy.
Yeah, killing this, killing that. Yeah, it's weird. So, yeah, I understand why people wanted to kill him. And he was then transferred to a less secure unit after a year. On the morning of November 28, 1994, Jeffrey Dahmer was found on the floor of the bathrooms of the gym suffering from extreme head and facial wounds.
Aw.
The final one. He had been beaten in his face and head with a 20-inch metal bar, and it seemed his face had also been slammed against the wall during his assault. When he was found, Jeff was like half alive. Technically, he was alive. He was rushed to a nearby hospital, but was pronounced dead 1 hour later because of his severe beating. There was a fellow inmate who was serving a life sentence. He is the one who actually attacked Jeff, and the authorities had asked him, like, why did you actually attack Jeffrey? He said that the killer, Jeffrey, and then another inmate, the trio, they were set to go to clean the staff locker room together, and normally an officer watches you to make sure something like this doesn't happen. But just for like 1 split second, an officer left. According to this inmate who killed Jeffrey, when he was beating Jeffrey with a metal pole, Jeffrey didn't make any noise. He didn't say anything. He didn't cry. He didn't flinch. This inmate said, God told me to do it. So, like, it might be like an entity told him to do it. Like, he was like a vision killer. Not only did this inmate kill Jeffrey, but he also killed another inmate who was sleeping with them. Again, he said God told him to do it, that he needed to do it. So I really think this is a visionary killer. A lot of people were happy about it when they heard he was murdered, but inside the prison, a lot of guards were very upset because at the end of the day, like, a murder is a murder. It was like a big deal, and plus a lot of people wanted him dead though. So to think that he was gonna like actually be fine, so he died, yeah, that's actually really messed up. But like, what I personally think is that if someone is sent to life to prison, that you have to serve the life in prison, because that just makes that very quick and easy for them. Yeah, but like, yeah. So like basically Jeffrey died. He was killed. Like, what? Like a coincidence. Like, oh my god.
Stop.
Like, oh, Jeffrey, man. Okay, I'm not laughing because this is so uncomfortable. Like, it's like the whole story is so messed up. He was like a psychopath. The father of Jeffrey ended up writing a book on his experience and the life with Jeffrey. His mom passed away sadly, may she rest in peace, in the year 2000. And he had a little brother that he gave a name. His name was David. He ended up changing his last name because I understand, like, if you have that last name, you're really close with the case, and yeah. So I don't blame him. And that was the case of Jeffrey Dahmer. I don't want to say I hope you enjoyed, because that sounds weird, but yeah, that was me explaining his case and what happened. Okay, bye, and we see you soon in the next episode of
Crime.
Okay, bye. Thank you for listening to episode 2 of PodCrime.
Crime.
And see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.